there are things that you can do audibly that are recognizable across all sorts of spectrums in your brand touch points with anyone who's coming in contact with your brand. And that acknowledgement that it was worth paying for was a pretty big indication that this is something people should be paying attention to.
Today we get to speak with Jodi Krangle. We had so much fun talking about audio and branding and podcasting that I decided to bring her back. She's the podcast host over at Audio Branding, the Hidden Gem of Marketing. Now in episode 34, we discovered her love for computers, software, and music, and how it drove her into her passion for voice-over acting. In episode 34, we discovered her love for computers, software, and music, and how it drove her into her passion for voice-over acting. But in this episode, we get to dig deeper into what it takes to become a voiceover artist and how important it is to be coachable. We also discuss the differences between podcasting and voiceover acting. So let's jump right in. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. We have Jodi Krangle coming back to talk with us. And she's been doing a lot of fun stuff. Her main job is to, I want to say make fun of people, but that's not what she does. She talks for people. She talks for people. She creates these amazing voiceovers and voiceover acting. And there's so much involved in getting even one 5-minute session done. So I decided to bring her back because voiceover is something that I want to get into. It's something that I've been very passionate about. I love messing around with my sound. I love singing. I've been singing with bands, and I was like, let's bring her back and learn more about how she got into voiceover acting and what all it takes to become one. So Jodi, thank you so much for coming back. So where we left off was around a lot of different things. We talked about, your favorite hobby, your hobby that you would have tried, your favorite board game, the movies, and we talked about all of those fun things. And there's a lot of depth into each value that we picked. So let's go into we could talk more about your hobbies and the movie, because being a geek myself, and I know you're a geek because we talked a lot about computers, about PC, right? It's like, right, how do we go to that next level? So tell us a little bit about
Totally a geek.
I think you did talk about getting into voiceover, but what does it take for somebody to get into voiceover acting? Yes.
A willingness to learn and a willingness to believe that you do not know everything. That's number one, because it takes coaching. That's the very first thing that you absolutely need to do if you want to make a living at this and actually be competitive in the market. You need coaching, because that coach will tell you when you're ready to make a demo, and your demo is your calling card, and you do not want to spend the kind of money you need to spend on that demo unless your coach says you're ready, because it can get expensive. Like thousands of dollars. We're not talking about, no, you can't be nickel and diming on your demo. That's really, really important. And it needs to sound like those spots could be real. Whether or not you're brand new to this or not, you need those spots to sound as real as possible. And that's just what you need to be competitive. But beyond that, you actually need to wear a lot of hats. So not only are you a performer and an actor, but you're also an audio engineer.
Yeah.
You're also your own business manager. You're your own marketing and branding person. You are your own invoicing
Yeah.
person. This is a business. You need to know how to invoice and keep track of your expenses and what you're earning. There's all sorts of aspects of this
Not at all.
that I
And
think a lot of
maybe
people don't take
podcast
into
is that.
account because they
But
think it's
even
just sitting
then,
in
right,
front of a
even
microphone and
podcasting
talking. And
requires
that's
a
not
lot
what
of
it is,
discipline.
especially not these
Because
days.
last time I checked, there was 800,000 podcasts, and now there are a million more.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 1.7, 1.8 million new podcasts since the last time this all came together. So
Yeah,
it's
probably. Yeah.
it's insane. And
Yes.
and it's because it's becoming so much easier to create podcasts, right? We have apps and we have
It's pretty crazy.
utilities people are jumping on. And then I think the other reason why people are jumping on podcasts is because everyone's at
Mm-hmm.
home. Hmm. Yeah.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the equipment to do this has gotten less expensive too, right? So maybe if
Hmm.
someone was interested in voiceover and they got into podcasting first, they would know the equipment and then they could just sort
Yeah.
of make the
Yeah.
leap. I kind of did it the other way around. I was already a voice actor and then I just decided, hey, podcasting would be cool.
Oh yeah.
And I had the equipment and I had the booth and I had all the stuff that I needed, but I still had to learn how
It's
to do a
funny because
podcast. I mean,
I did that too.
when I started this, I was removing all the breaths. That's what they do. Well, yeah, you're laughing.
Hmm.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. But like this is a
Exactly.
mistake. This is something that you don't do in podcasting. I totally do it for voiceover because my clients want that cleanup. They don't want to deal with that stuff if they don't have to, and
I
I don't
did that
make them
so
have
much,
to.
like with
But
all of
when you're
my
talking
solo
about
episodes where I would
podcasting
be
and you want to
talking
be
about
real,
beekeeping.
you
I'm
can't
taking
remove your
out
breaths and expect to
breaks
not
and
sound
taking
like a
out,
robot.
and I just sound like word after word after word. Like, when did this guy take any breath? Right?
Hmm.
Why isn't he repeating words? Yes, it does. People want to hear real life conversation, and I think
It
podcasting
stresses us
and
out to listen.
what's really cool about
Yeah.
podcasting and voiceover acting is how similar they are to each other, but then also different. Like
Yes.
one podcast that I ran into, I was playing around with iHeartRadio because as soon as I knew that my
Hmm.
podcast was available on iHeartRadio, I downloaded the app, and of course there's ads, and I saw the ad for um, what's his name, Will Ferrell's
Hmm.
character. He's got his own podcast,
Of
Ron
course.
Burgundy. His podcast. Yes, it's so good. Right? So
Hmm.
he's got he's talking as Ron Burgundy on the
Oh,
podcast, and
yes, a Ron
all of
Burgundy
those
podcast. Oh my God, that is
enunciations and all
awesome.
of those like character flaws and whatnot, right? So being
Yeah.
ignorant and being like so verbose about everything, and then he's got, of course, he's got his production engineer with him, who's also part of the podcast, and from her reactions you could just totally tell like the feeling that you're supposed to be feeling, and you're
Hmm.
like, oh my god, I'm sure she's sweating, or you start sweating
Hmm.
based on the conversation. It's so good. And then he had the actor who played
Yeah,
from Game of Thrones, the short dude. I can't Peter
that's
Dinklage.
great.
He had him as a guest, right? And he loves poetry. And he's like, he just loves
Oh,
bashing other people.
oh, okay.
Like
Yeah.
Ron
Uh-huh.
Burgundy, that's his character. So you're listening to this, and I'm like, wow, like the
Hmm.
level of effort. I mean, of course, they've got a crew, they've got a huge team, right? Yes, yes. But what's funny is that
Of
this,
course.
so Ron Burgundy
Well,
podcast
everyone's
actually
at home
started
right now,
last
right?
year
This
when
is
Conan
what
launched
people
his
do instead
podcast.
of
So
being on
yeah,
camera.
so Conan launched it. Will Ferrell was the first guest. Will Ferrell launched, probably a couple of weeks later,
Mm.
like I'm going to have a podcast, and there's a lot of
Okay,
actors that
okay.
have podcasts.
Yeah.
Hmm. No, I need to check that out.
Yeah, you
Oh,
know
I
who else
bet.
has a
I bet.
podcast that started
And
last year,
he was one
actually,
of
I
my.
believe? David Tennant.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is fantastic.
Oh
He has
man,
some really good guests on there. Yeah. He had Jim Parsons on.
it's
Not
not meant
too
to be
recent,
funny.
not
Yeah,
too far, yeah, not too far back. Yeah, and it was a great discussion. It was like there, and it's not meant,
yeah,
I mean, it has funny moments, but it's not meant to be funny. It's just, yeah, it's
yeah.
just this really down to earth guy talking with
No,
other down to
he. I
earth
think he
people,
was one
which
of the
is
best.
like, considering some of the guests he
I
had
think he
on
was one
is
of the best
remarkable. I mean, it was
doctors. You
fantastic.
know,
I love David Tennant. I just think
and
he's
then there was.
wonderful.
He was very relatable. Yes, that's so true. And then who
Yes.
was after him? It was something Smith,
He was the most
Matt Smith.
relatable, I think.
So I think they were
Yeah.
all good, and the
Yeah.
latest doctor that we have, I think she's really amazing too.
Matt Matt Smith, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wish they wrote better for her. I don't mind that she has
She
an
is.
ensemble cast around her. I don't
Yeah.
think that's a bad thing. It's just they're very heavy-handed these days with what she's doing, and she's an excellent
Mm,
actor. Like I've seen her in other things, and she's a really good actor. I don't think they're
I
using
haven't seen
her
it.
to
No,
the
not.
amount that they could be, and they're not writing scripts for her that I don't know. And
Ooh,
yeah, like the latest, I don't know if you saw the
I will
very
check it
end
out.
of Doctor Who. Yeah, I won't spoil it
Wow.
for you, but it
So going
kind
from
of turns
voiceover
everything on
to
its ear.
podcasting to
So I
talking
would
about
suggest you
actors
watch it.
creating podcasts,
Yeah.
like there's so many tangents, or should I say
Hmm.
tenants? Right. But
Yeah.
maybe I should throw that thing in.
Hmm.
All right. So
Yeah.
be coachable. I think that's a really
But
powerful. I mean,
tish.
as entrepreneurs, as human beings, being coachable is so important because it helps with your personal development, not just
Hmm.
professional, right? So I think that's really positive. So how would somebody, let's say, get started
Yeah.
if they want to? So let's say they agree to that mantra of being coachable, being taking the time to learn the craft. What's the next step?
Hmm. For voiceover, the very first thing that I would do is direct them to a website. It's called VoiceOver Extra, XTRA. So
Mm-hmm.
voiceoverxtra.com. And that is a resource that has a whole bunch of articles on it, a whole bunch of webinars that you can take for like $50 or less, all sorts of ideas of what genres there are, ideas of who the reputable coaches
Mm.
are, and ideas on which different genres
Wow.
there are, how to work on your business, all of the stuff that goes into the meat and potatoes of being a voice actor. It'll give you the lay of the land and sort of let you
Right away.
understand what the big picture is here. Once you've had a look at that and you haven't run away screaming, then you could sort of
Mm.
dig in and decide on a coach. And once you decide on a
Yeah.
coach, it really all progresses from that. Because that coach will tell you when you're ready. When you have your demo, then you
Hmm.
make yourself a website, you hang out your shingle, you audition,
After
you
the
find
coaching, after
places, you
you've done the
market,
exercises,
you
you've done
research
all of
who to
this
ask if they need
homework.
anything. All of this is,
Okay.
it all follows after the
Ah.
coaching. It really does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when your coach tells you you're
Right.
ready to be competitive, because otherwise, if you're not competitive, you're just hanging your shingle out and you're never going to get a job, right? Like this is a competitive business. It's
Absolutely.
not a cutthroat business. All of the people who are
Mm-hmm.
doing this are all, I don't think I have met one person who isn't a really nice person in voiceover because we're all different. And it's a very subjective and yet um, not personal thing when you don't get a job. So I may not be right. I may
Yeah.
not have been chosen for one particular job because someone who was running the job had someone else's voice in their head. They were hearing something else other than what I gave them. But it might be that the next job that,
It's
other
very
people
broad.
tried out for, I'll get because I'm the voice in their head. That's what they were picturing. That's what they were imagining.
Yeah.
It's just yeah, yeah.
Exactly. No.
And so none of us are really feeling like we're competing
Mm-hmm.
with one another. The fact that I didn't get
Yeah,
a job
exactly.
doesn't mean that I suck. It just means that I wasn't right for that job, and there are plenty of jobs that I will be right
Mm.
for. And
Yeah.
yeah, so what you want to be is you want to be on the level where you can
So
compete
I've
with the
seen
people
a
who
lot
have been
of
doing this
job
for
postings, let's
a
say
while,
on
because otherwise you won't get
backstage.com,
heard,
and there's another
So
place I can't remember right now. But they have like these are voiceover specific jobs. So it's like, all right, let me apply to a couple of them. One of
mhm.
them was you're a computer voice and you're recording, right, for apps and whatnot. So
Yep.
I applied for some of them. Didn't really get heard back because maybe they were looking for somebody
Yeah,
who
yeah.
sounds a little bit different or a little bit
Mhm.
had a different character. Hmm. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. This is something else. If you're going to be a
Yes.
voice actor, you need a thick skin and you need to just do the audition and let it go because
Hmm.
you are not
Sit
going to
down.
hear
Yeah.
squat unless they hire you.
Yeah.
They're just not going to reach out and let you know, "Oh, sorry, we didn't
Yes, you
give you
just
the job."
you
They don't have
basically
time for
gotta keep
that.
showing up or keep
So if you didn't
applying
get the job, you're
to the
just not going to hear
jobs.
anything. So you move on and you go to the next one. That's just how it goes. Mhm.
Hmm. No, no, they don't.
But I will warn you that the great majority of
Okay.
the jobs that are on Backstage don't pay very well. Yeah, so there is something called the GVAA rate guide that I would direct anyone who is interested in this to, because
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are the
Hmm.
standard to medium rates. Now, there are people who ask for more than that. I
Hmm.
do. I'll admit I do. Yeah. But those are minimum. Like, really, you need to
Yes.
know what the rates should be because if you accept doing stuff for $25 for a 30-second commercial, then you're
Hmm.
bringing down the whole industry. That's not, and also, we are licensing our
Exactly.
voices. It's not how long it
Yeah.
takes us
Yeah.
to do. Otherwise, I would get paid
Hmm.
less after 13 years doing this. And that's not how this works.
Hmm.
So it's about licensing. It's a lot like licensing music, especially when you're talking about advertising. Anything that's for broadcast, you are licensing your voice for a certain amount of time, a
That
certain
makes sense.
geographical area, and the larger that
Hmm.
geographical area and the longer the time that it's being used, the more you should
Yes.
be paid.
You need to get a sliver
So
of that.
it's all
Hmm.
about, yeah, it's about
It
how
is
many people are
still,
hearing it
yeah, it's still
and how
something.
many
Exactly.
millions of dollars
Exactly.
is that making the client.
Really, really awesome
You
points.
know?
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Well, it is a
Um,
sliver, but it's still
I think some of
something.
the
Yeah.
things that were
Mhm.
that are very parallel, I
No
think,
problem.
between voiceover industry and entrepreneurship, and I think a lot of these, right? You've got to have a thick skin. You've got to have that the ability to take rejection.
Mhm.
Yes, 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 yes. It
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And constructive criticism. That's a big thing
You're in the
too.
wrong
Yeah.
business.
If you can't take
No,
that,
you're
especially
so
if you're
right
starting
because
out in
as a
voiceover, if
designer,
you
right,
can't
I've
take
had to
that,
take
run for
criticism
the
on my
hills
design. Like,
because
oh, why did you
you
design
are
it this
not
way?
meant for this.
Why can't you use this color? Why
Yeah.
can't you use that color? So all of that, goes into anytime you're creating content for somebody else,
Yep.
you are privy to their criticism. You got to make it look like what they wanted. You got to make it sound like what they wanted. If they want that star splashing font or color, or you got to put it in
Yes.
because that's what the customer ordered.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's exactly the same thing in voiceover, and that goes from the be coachable to
Yes.
be directable. So, yes, we
Mm-hmm.
are professionals in what
Yeah.
we do,
That's not
but
our call,
we
exactly.
still need
They
to
are
give the
expecting like,
client what they
mm-hmm.
want. And we may not think that what they want is what they should want, but that's not our call.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying us. Exactly. We give them what they want. So, not only do you need to listen to a coach and take their direction and learn from that, but you also need to understand that at the end of the day, this is a service you are offering to someone. And if they ask you to
There they
do
are.
something in a certain way, that's the
They're
way you do
back.
it.
No matter if it's 8 a.m. in the morning
Hello.
or 4 in the afternoon. There they are. I forgot to lock my
Yeah,
door.
they're back.
It's awesome. I know,
Or
right?
4 in the afternoon. There you go.
Well, the little one hasn't showed up yet. In 2 minutes.
It's all good. At least you don't have to play DJ this
That's
time.
what it is. I love it. I love it. All right, so we talked about having a thick skin,
Oh, okay.
be coachable, be directable, and keep trying, right? And don't give up and keep going. And I think what's really powerful is that it's funny.
Yeah.
That's the message every industry is saying. And people are like, no, give me the shortest way to get there. Like, yeah, there's no shortcut.
Everyone wants the shortcut, but there is no shortcut, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
the thing is, you need to learn these lessons, and some of the things, I've said this so many times, you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know until you encounter that
is.
particular situation
And-
or
and,
a
you know, the-
particular
the one
person who can
example
give you the
that Tony
information
Robbins
that
always
gets you past
says,
that hump. But
no wonder
yeah,
why every
that's
single
just the way life
child
is.
can walk. They didn't give up on crawling or learning how to walk, right? You got to keep trying and keep growing that mindset. Have that growth mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you never know how close you are to getting where you wanted to be. Right? Like, you just can't see
Yes.
the end
I
because
think that's
you're not
so
there
true.
yet.
And
But you don't know how close
as
it is. Like,
entrepreneur
it could
and in the
be
social
really
media, you're looking
close.
at
And
everybody.
if
Oh,
you
what
quit
are they
before you
doing?
get there,
What are they doing? And
you're never going to
basically
know.
comparison and switching, right? And when you do that, you are stunting your own growth,
Oh, comparisons.
right?
Oh, that's death.
And what's that doing?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so we planted a garden this spring, and
You totally
now
are.
that the
Yeah.
weather's getting cold, there's so much tomatoes in in 3 of our plants, but they're hanging out green. I'm like, why aren't they ripening? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, all right, what do we do to what do we do with green tomatoes? And they're like, oh, you can make green mayo, you can make green sauce and all that stuff. I'm like, but why aren't they ripening? So I found this video, and the guy's like, well, here's what you're not doing is you're not pruning those leaves, because if you have a ton of leaves, the plant can only direct so much energy for those fruit to ripen. So you gotta, so you gotta cut off those leaves that have no fruit on them. You gotta trim it, so then the energy of the plant goes to those fruits and they
Okay,
become
that makes
ripe. And I'm
sense.
like, you know what? We haven't been paying attention to the plants. They're just growing on their own. They're not getting any pruning, and that's what ends up with life. Is what you do is you just trying you're trying to you're basically trying so many different things, and you're
Yeah.
like, why is this project moving forward because you're multitasking, and that's what ends up. So I learned a lesson like, okay, in order to get to anywhere, you need to
Yeah.
put all of your focus to that one task to get to that next level. Hmm.
Yeah.
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 I will say that I didn't really get anywhere in my voiceover career until I was full
Yeah.
time, whether I
Yeah.
was making money or not. It
Another
didn't matter.
article,
I just had to
an
put my whole
article
focus
that I
on that
read
one
recently
thing.
by
And
Nathan Barry.
until I did
He
that,
he
I couldn't
runs,
get
or he
anywhere.
created ConvertKit.com, and he talks about, or he basically wrote this blog called $1 Billion Blog, where he talks about this one lady
Hmm.
who started this blog back in 2010, and she recently sold the blog and the product line that came around it for $1.2 billion. Yeah,
Hmm.
good for her, right? So, and then he has a ton of different examples around blogging and how they've
Whoa.
converted.
Good for
So
her,
he's
first
got like
off.
4 really good points
Yeah.
on
That's pretty
what you should be
awesome.
doing. Sure, you can start with a
Hmm.
personal brand, but you got to have a brand that's not attached to that personal name because it cannot scale unless you get to that next level. So there's some really good points in this blog, and again, it all came down to time.
Hmm.
She kept putting time into her blog, talking
Yeah.
about fashion and
Hmm.
the material, the products that she was using, and then she ended up creating her own line of products,
Hmm.
right? So that's what created the value. But if she had just given up, like, who can make money off of blogs? Well, there's a ton of people doing. Well, I can do it too. So you've got to have that trust and that
Hmm.
belief in yourself to continue doing
Yeah. Yeah.
it. I don't know what
Just
they're
don't
doing over
stop.
there.
Yeah.
It's just taken us a little bit longer to get there, I guess.
What are they doing over there?
Right. I don't know if you can hear my kids. Okay, I can't hear them because I'm wearing these headphones. And yeah, they're playing.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about.
So in the
Okay.
basement, we
Okay.
have also the
Yeah.
playroom, of course, right? So they're done with their
They're
schoolwork,
just
and
having a discussion. I
the
don't know what they're
nanny
doing.
just left. So yeah, they're all down here having a blast, playing
Okay. Hmm.
playing some fun, which is fun, which is awesome. I could definitely
Hmm.
edit it out.
Okay.
All right, so we talked about
Uh-huh.
podcasting, voiceover acting, being coachable, being editable, being directable. So, talk to us a little bit about audio branding, about your
Hmm.
podcast and what you're talking about, and
Yeah.
what inspired you. Like, how can I use audio branding for my podcast or my products?
Well, I started it because as a voice actor, I'm one tiny little part of the whole big audio branding spectrum. And I mean, normally by the time someone actually gets to me, they've already got their audio branding in general in place. If they've thought about this at all, this is the thing, right? Like there are some companies that just don't give this any thought. It's an afterthought. They don't really care. They have all their fonts and their colors and their logo and the rest of it they let the ad agency handle, right? But there are some people that are starting to pay attention now, finally. I mean, this has been going on for a long time, but there was a book that was put together in 2010, actually, and Europe is way ahead of the curve as far as North America is concerned. Like as far as this is concerned, they're way ahead of us. But as far as audio branding for a podcast, I would say Think about the music you're using, think about the voice you use for your intro and outro, and think about the phrases that you say on a regular basis. So if you start off every podcast or end every podcast on a particular phrase, like I know a guy who does a podcast called Total Life Freedom, and it's like 7 minutes long. They're not very long. But at the end of it, he always says, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Like he just said, and he kind of says it in this like sing-songy kind of way. And it's awesome. And I know that every time I hear that, that's the end of the podcast. Like it's just, but it's a phrase that I now equate with him. And so DJs do this and podcasters do this. And if you have a particular phrase that is unique to you that you just say all the time, use it. Why not?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a really cheap way to have your own audio branding. What it is it's a unique, mostly unique. It doesn't have to be like completely unique because there's nothing completely unique left. but something that is memorable and consistent, and that you do on a regular basis, like consistently. And that makes you memorable. It makes people remember who you are and equate that
Wow,
phrase or
that's
that
such a
music
good
or that
point. So I've been
voice or
watching Peter
whatever
McKinnon.
with who you
He's
are.
up there in
And
Canada
it
too.
just allows them
And
to recall
every video
you
that he
quicker.
starts, he's got that little sound effect that he does with his sound, with his mouth and all that, right? And he's like, it took me a while to get that right, but every time, it's a
Yeah.
Peter McKinnon. It's gonna be an awesome Peter McKinnon video when you hear that sound. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know
Consciously
Gary
doing
Vee
that.
does that on his
Yeah.
videos. He has like
Wow.
a particular sound that he uses at the beginning of all his videos, and he talked about it in an article. So he's actually
Yeah.
consciously doing audio branding. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of uses for this, and it does not have to be expensive.
I love
Really,
it. I
all it
love it. So,
is
how would
consistency
one
in a sound that
create an audio
you
brand
use
for
for your own
themselves?
branding.
So we've been talking. So, I mean, we've heard personal branding, right? Then there's the big company, the mass branding, right? Of company branding or whatever. So how would one? So you already mentioned that there needs to be certain something
Yeah,
for
yeah.
your own audio brand. So how would one start the process of getting that going? I guess.
Well, there are a lot of things to consider. So, if you're a business, you want to even pay attention to your on hold, the music that you play when someone's waiting on your phone system. You want to pay attention to the music you're using in videos for your website. You want to be consciously choosing a voiceover that matches your company image, that elicits the emotions you want people to feel when they hear what your company does. And really all this comes down to is, like I said, being memorable and being consistent. And that does not need to be expensive. You could, it certainly can be. I mean, I know MasterCard spent like $15 million or something on their new, this is now 3 years old, I think, something like that. But they created a musical series of notes that they now use on every touch point they have. So if you're using a machine, if you're watching one of their commercials, if anything that you're hearing from them, they've created a series of notes that is consistent across their entire brand spectrum and consistent worldwide. So what they've done is they made music that could translate from the North American market
Yeah.
to the Chinese market, to the Indian market, to the, I don't know, like anywhere else, the
Yeah.
Brazil market. Like it could be, it may use different instruments. It may use a
It's
different
similar to the Nike swoosh
tonality,
swoosh
I
sign.
guess.
You see it anywhere.
But it's consistent and still evokes their particular brand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, yeah, yeah. But there are things that you can do audibly that are recognizable across all sorts of spectrums in your brand touch points with anyone who's coming in contact with your brand.
No,
And
you're
that
absolutely right. And the
acknowledgement
more you
that it
talk
was
about
worth
audio
paying for
branding,
was
the
a
more
pretty
I
big
realize
indication that
that
this is something
the
people should be
music, the
paying attention
songs that
to.
we've been singing from the different TV shows, movies, soundtracks, video games. That's exactly what it is. Do 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 do. Bum, 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 bum. Who does not know what
Yeah.
that is, right?
Video games. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We all know what that is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Oh.
yeah. So these are things that
Mm-hmm.
recall something that we can see in our mind's eye just by hearing that sound,
Yes.
right?
Oh
So
my God.
so like the Intel da 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 da, right? Like that, when you hear that, you know exactly why you're hearing it and what that is about. And those are called ear cons. So that is a very specific part of audio branding that I guess they would sort of make like a smaller section called sonic branding, which I guess would be like an ear con. Little notes like the Taco Bell bell and things like this that immediately call the company to mind. But that is a part of audio branding. I mean, all that is a series of
Wow. I
notes
love
that are
it. I love it.
consistent
And
and
what's cool
memorable.
is
And
I
all you
got
have to do is
lucky.
hear
I
them and
really
you
got
know
lucky about
exactly
picking
who
the
that's talking
soundtrack
about.
that goes with my podcast. I used to give a ride to my buddy to the train, and he's like, "Okay, what can I do for you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm looking for a soundtrack for my podcast. What can I use?" And he's like, "Well, I created this soundtrack or this song." So he gave me like this minute and a half or like almost 2 minute long song. So I like take
Yeah.
parts of the song and I use it in the intro and I use it in the outro.
Nice.
And then I use the same sound whenever I go live on Facebook, and I'll be using use the first minute and a half of it to say
Perfect.
people, "Oh, I'm coming on," or whatever, like a waiting sound. But then they can listen to the music, and they immediately relate it. Okay, this is Hacks and Hobbies coming right on, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so true.
It's
That's so
great. And
true.
it's really good that
The
you have
only
something that
thing
was made
that I
specially
might
for
need to
you so
change
that
is so
no one else
in
is
the
going to take
intro
that
of my
sound and use it
podcast, I
for
don't know
their
if you heard
branding,
it,
right?
but it's like, "Welcome to Hacks
Yeah.
and Hobbies." Like this thicker voice that I've made up, right? And my wife heard, like, she's never heard it before, and she heard it. She's like, "Is that you? Is that who's that? Is that
Yeah.
on every episode of your
Yeah.
podcast?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh my God, you need to change it." I'm like, after 300
Who's
episodes,
that?
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Yeah. Podcasting is really personal. And I think a lot of us who have experience with radio, and I mean, I don't have all that much experience, but there are a lot of people who have radio experience who end up doing this, both
That's
voiceovers and
interesting.
podcasting. And I think
Yeah.
that the people in radio think they need to put on something. Like, you can't just be
That's so
you.
interesting.
Because no one's
Wow.
interested in just you. They
It
just,
is.
they want the radio voice. No, they don't. No, they really don't. And podcasting is so personal. It's in your ear, right? You're listening. One person is listening to this in their
Yeah.
headphones in their ear. This was something Pandora told me as well, because I do some advertising voiceover for them on their network. And Pandora told me what you want to do is you want to speak like you are speaking to one person, because that one person is listening to the music in their headphones,
So I
in
should
their
change my
earbuds,
intro.
whatever,
Be more personal.
while they're doing something else, and you want to be personal. You want to be you.
I was trying to go for the
'Cause,
Ron
no one
Burgundy
wants
route,
to. Yeah, I hate to say it, just be you.
I
That's
did.
it.
I definitely
People
did
want to know
accomplish that.
you. Otherwise,
This Ron Burgundy brown guy.
Well, apparently you accomplished that.
Oh, that's so much fun. Oh. All right. So since we already asked those fun questions in the intro, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
All right. I have a
What
question
do I want to
that,
talk about? Oh, I don't
and I
know.
think this is
I need
something
some
that you
prompts here.
mentioned in our last call. Was oh my god, I need to. I can't edit that out. No way, sir. I need a voice boost.
Well, your kids are having fun.
Oh my god. I need to turn my shed into a yeah.
Oh,
I've got the right size. It's like 8 feet by 12 feet or something. I can't remember.
maybe.
It's a really good size. Yeah. All right. Now that they've quiet down. All right. So this question I heard
perfect.
on another
That'd work.
podcast.
Yeah.
And what is your ideal view of freedom? And I think you talked about having the time freedom. But yeah, we talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't we talk about this already?
Mm,
Yeah. I need my relaxing time.
yeah.
If I'm too rushed,
Yeah.
then I start to get really stressed out. I'm definitely an introvert. That doesn't mean that I'm shy
Hmm.
necessarily, but it does mean that I recharge by being
You
alone and
become the
having
Hulk.
peace. And if I don't have enough alone time and peace time, I
You
become
wouldn't
a
want to
very
see me when
irritable
I'm
Jody.
hungry.
Yeah, well, yeah, don't make me angry. Yeah. So
Mm,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, I plan my life so that I get things done, but I try not to. Every once in a while it just happens because,
Hmm.
but I try not to overextend myself and program too many things in a day. Because if I do, I know I'm not going to be very good at any of it.
That's right.
But for me, it's what we were talking about before, time freedom. You can't get back time. Time is gone once you've used it. So for me, that's the most important thing. And if I was a person who was taking a salary from a company, I would definitely take a lower salary to have more time freedom. I couldn't help myself. There's no way I could be a productive member of their team
That's so
unless I
true.
had
That is so
some
true.
time freedom.
It.
And I think a
I
lot
think
of
it just happened
millennials
that
and
we,
younger people
growing up,
are
we were just
experiencing that
like,
too.
okay, yeah, gotta rush. But what's funny is that we were ignored or we were not taught properly how to navigate our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we were ignored. Like, here's some television. Here's some television. So
Yeah,
here's my
because we were
daughter.
ignored. I
This is the
remember.
one who
I remember.
needed a
Yes.
diaper
Gen
change.
X. Yes.
Say hi.
Oh, hello.
She
Hi.
can't hear you. Can you hear now?
I was hearing Wheels on the Bus last time.
Well, this
Oh,
is
okay.
a excellent reminder of
Hi.
when to end the podcast.
Oh, boy.
So, Jody, thank you so much for your time, your excellent stories,
Yeah,
the
I
wisdom
guess
that you
so.
bring to us, and audio branding and voice
Thank you.
acting, and being able to create the content with the time freedom that you have. I think it's super important, especially in this time, to be able to do that and have that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thanks so much. Thanks so much. Yes, they are. There's something new that I'm trying to
Yeah.
launch, and it's
It
basically
was my
we'll
pleasure.
be
I
playing a
love doing
video
these with
game
you. They're fun.
or like a
Yeah.
board game live, and it's similar. I'll share you this YouTube video where these four WWF
Mm-hmm.
fighters play Uno live on YouTube. I don't know if you've seen this before. Yeah.
Okay.
But they're playing Uno and they're like
Oh,
having conversation. And in Uno, you
I
can play a
haven't. I've
game
seen
where
people
one
play
person doesn't
D&D
get any
before
get
online,
any
and that's fun.
chance
I
to
mean, I
play
love
because
that. So,
they're getting skipped or they're getting reversed on. So it's a ton of fun. It's like a 56-minute long video where they play at multiple games, right? So I was like, this is pretty cool.
oh
And then I
boy. Okay.
found a lot of games on Steam.
Can you help me?
Sure.
Okay.
Found these games
Uh-huh.
on Steam, like Settlers of Catan. There's Monopoly on there. So there's a ton of games on there that I was like, this would be a pretty fun to play online with people. So
Oh, yeah.
when we
Okay.
get that multi-million
Yeah.
dollar deal, we'll make it happen. But that's something I'm looking to launch maybe next year, because this year's already.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thanks again so much. Have an awesome day and enjoy your week.
That sounds like fun. Yeah.
Talk soon. Is it all done? Wow.
Thank you. You too. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.